Okay, seniors, how's it going? Second part of today's lesson on the pods. I'll try to go faster with this lecture. The last one was a little too long. I'm sorry about that. Battle of Shiloh, and this is a very important battle. It's going to be the biggest battle to date in the Civil War, and it's also a turning point in the war that gives the Union a decisive advantage. It's coming in the aftermath of the battles of Henry and Donaldson that we talked about in the last lecture. And those two battles at Forts Henry and Donaldson had given the Union access to two rivers, the Tennessee River and the Cumberland River. This meant that it facilitated the Union invasion of the South through Tennessee. So within a few weeks of the fall of Fort Donaldson, Nashville, which is on the Cumberland River, had fallen. The capital of Tennessee had fallen, okay? And so now the Union is going to start pouring men and resources into Tennessee. We mentioned that leadership in the Union Army was divided between two guys, Henry Halleck and Don Carlos Buell. Ulysses S. Grant, who was responsible for the victories at Henry and Donaldson, the real credit for the battles should have gone to him. He was under the command of Henry Halleck, and his commander, Henry Halleck, basically took credit for the victories at Henry and Donaldson. Okay, and so not Grant, and so Henry Halleck is then made commander of all the Union soldiers west of the Appalachian Mountains. So all the troops over here where you can't see. Okay. And Henry Halleck orders Grant to go to a place called Pittsburgh Landing. And he orders Don Carlos Buell to meet him there. And so Halleck's purpose is to concentrate forces at Pittsburgh's Landing in Tennessee, very close to the border between Tennessee and Mississippi, and on the Tennessee River. So if you look at the map, Pittsburgh's Landing is about right here on the Tennessee River where my thumb is. Forts Henry and Donaldson are up here in the north of Tennessee. The Union are moving down, right? It's about 20 miles north of a place. Oh, here, I'll put this again. This is where the Union Army is concentrated. And this is, again, for the purpose of invading the South, right? And so they're going to get about 75, they're hoping to get about 75,000 guys here at Pittsburgh Landing for the Union. The Confederates, meanwhile, are massing troops at a place called Corinth. It's in Mississippi, about 20 miles south of Pittsburgh's Landing. And it is an important railroad junction. The Confederates want to defend this place because it's one of the few places where you have railroads running east-west as well as north-south, right around here. So Corinth is around here, very close to the Tennessee border, okay, in northern Mississippi. All right. So Confederate troops are massing here. To protect the railroad junction. Have to keep those supplies and men moving east, west, north, south if you have any hope of winning the war, right? All right, they've got about 42,000 guys there concentrated at Pittsburgh's Landing. All right. Now, the Confederates there at Corinth are not interested in waiting around to get smashed by the Union invasion. They decide they're going to go on the offensive. So you have a Confederate march north to engage the enemy at Pittsburgh's Landing. So they're marching about 20 miles north. We're in early April here. April 8th through 5th. Sorry, April 4th through 5th, 1862. The march is being led by a fellow named P.G.T. Beauregard. It was his idea to go on the offensive for the Confederacy. P.G.T. Beauregard. Beauregard. I think that was a very, he's a very, suave-looking, whatever, goatee. Beauregard. Okay. The problem with this march is that it's a heavy rains, early spring, April, lots of rain, lots of mud. The march gets delayed. They're supposed to attack on the 4th. The attack doesn't come. They're supposed to attack on the 5th. The attack doesn't come. What's the big deal with the delay? Well, the whole reason why this attack might be successful was because you'd have the element of surprise. The longer you delay, the more likely it is that the Union scouts are going to see you're coming. They're going to find the Confederate line moving, and they're going to thwart the attack. They're going to lose the element of surprise. The other thing is that the Union soldiers are moving. Many of them are still moving toward Pittsburgh's Landing. You had Don Carlos Buell, who's bringing his troops down to Pittsburgh's Landing, and he's still marching. So if the Confederates had been able to attack earlier, they would have been able to face off against fewer Union troops. All right, finally, on April 6th, the attack goes forward. And Beauregard, at the last minute, loses his nerve, does not want to attack. His commanding officer, a fellow named Albert Sidney Johnston, who lost the forts of Donelson and Henry, overrules him and says, you got to go forward with the attack. So the first day of Shiloh is April 6th. First day of fighting, April 6th, 1862. Okay? And a fellow named William Tecumseh Sherman. William Tecumseh Sherman. Another guy with the crazy eyes guy. Another one of these fellas. He is the fellow who's, so the Union line is all, the Union troops are all lined up around Pittsburgh's Landing on the river. So if you got the river, Tennessee River, you can hardly see that, Pittsburgh's Landing, and then the Union regiments are all lined up in the area around here, right? And you got the border with Mississippi down here, and you got Tennessee here, and you got Corinth down here. Okay, Sherman is the guy closest to Corinth. His brigade is here. And so you've got the Confederates marching north, and so they hit Sherman first on April 6th. And they come out of the woods at a place close to a church called Shiloh. That's where we get the name of the battle, from this little church called Shiloh, very close to where Sherman's troops are massing. Okay, and they come out of the woods screaming the rebel yell. I'm not going to imitate it for you. It would be too alarming for people in the building. But it's terrifying, right? These guys coming in like ghosts out of the woods, screeching, screaming, horrifying. Okay. High-pitched is the thing to think about with this thing, with the rebel yell. High-pitched, men with high-pitched screaming coming out of the woods to kill you. Okay, so Sherman is able to hold the line. He's up and down all day long with the fighting. Very courageous, encouraging the men, calling in reinforcements, keeping the line strong where it is. Okay? On the Confederate side, on this first day of battle, the main commander, Albert Sidney Johnston, is dead, dies, killed. So he is replaced by this Beauregard with the goatee. Beauregard becomes the Confederate commander there. Okay. Some of the most intense fighting is along the center of the Union line. In the middle of where all the troops are lined up, along a place called the Sunken Road. And the sunken road was the troops there were under the command of a guy named, I think, David Prentice. But you had about 18,000 Confederates, 18,000 rebels versus only about 4,500 Union guys along this sunken road. This happens a lot in rural areas where you've got like hedgerows or fields on either side, and then you have a road that kind of sinks down into the earth in between the two fields or whatever. And so these 4,500 Union guys were able to hold off these 18,000 rebels for till about 5:30 in the afternoon, and eventually they are pushed back. Okay, but they buy time for Grant. Okay, so this very heroic holding the line by these Union troops buys time for General Grant. Now the result of the first day is that the Union loses ground about a mile worth of ground, right? Union is pushed back. Now that evening, Beauregard had the option of sending his troops forward to final push of offense against the Union. Okay, he didn't do it. He decided not to do it, and he got a lot of criticism for that. Okay, he probably actually made the right decision in the sense the Union had the advantage of artillery and the advantage of terrain. Okay, they also had a little bit of the advantage of numbers at this point. Okay, however, waiting was also a disaster. Why? Because on the night of April 6th and 7th, Don Carlos Buell arrives with another 35,000 troops to give the Union an incredible numerical advantage over the South. So on the night of April 6th and 7th, you've got 95,000 guys massed in this area around Pittsburgh's Landing and the Church of Shiloh, waiting to go to battle, waiting to go to war the next day. And you've got the ground littered with wounded and dying men groaning through the night, heavy, heavy rains, freezing cold, a miserable and awful night. And these men, many of them raw recruits with no experience, are just waiting for the inevitable to come the next day, and they're facing their death, their doom potentially. So it's not a good night for a lot of these guys, or for anybody really. Okay. So Grant, on the other hand, right, Ulysses S. Grant, he is in headquarters here at Pittsburgh Landing, and he's joined in the night by Don Carlos Buell. Remember what we said about Ulysses S. Grant. He is an aggressive guy. He's a guy who likes to go on the offense. He's a bold guy. He's not gonna lay down his arms. He's gonna get up and fight. Stay up and fight. He's confident. He understands that whatever fears he has, the enemy also has. So it's time to you got to exploit that. So he wants to go on the offense. He also knows logically that he has the advantage. He's got the higher ground. He's got more artillery, and he's got a lot more men. So he's going to begin the second day at Shiloh with an offensive. And that's really the story of the second day, is the Union counterattack. Union counterattack. And by midday, the Union has regained all the territory they lost the previous day. And at 2 o'clock, Beauregard calls in the retreat, and it is a Union victory at 2 p.m. Okay, so a huge Union victory. Now, what are the consequences of this battle? Why is it important? Why are you writing down notes about it? Okay. Well, the first thing is it is a horrific battle and numbers of people lost. It's the worst battle by far up to that point in the war. So if you took the dead and wounded of all the battles that had happened in the Civil War over the past year before Shiloh, and you added them up, and you doubled that, then you would get the numbers at Shiloh. So about 20,000 men were killed or wounded at Shiloh, evenly distributed roughly on both sides. That's twice as many men as were killed in all the battles of the entire war up to that point. So it's a horrific number of dead and wounded. And so the terribleness of the battle convinces Grant that this war can only be won by engaging in total war. What is total war? It means that you're committing all of your resources to the fight, to the battle. And that also means you're willing to sacrifice the lives of as many men as it takes in order to win. Okay, so you can't hesitate, you can't hold back, you can't be careful. You got to throw everything you have into the fight. That's the only way to win. And so after Shiloh, Grant commits to total war. Realizes it's the only way to win the Civil War for the North. Shiloh also is a turning point in the Western theater. Okay, it's really a story of success for the Union in the West, largely moving forward from here. It coincides roughly with the fall of New Orleans, which happens a little bit later in April 23rd, at the base of the Mississippi River. So New Orleans falls about April 23rd. After Shiloh, it's a matter of weeks before Memphis falls. So the soldiers move over here to Memphis, and they take Memphis in April. And then by the summer, the only place left on the Mississippi River that's fortified by the rebels is Vicksburg. And Vicksburg is going to be the one holdout, the one place along the Mississippi River that holds out for the next year. Okay? But everywhere else in the West, all the major places have fallen to the north. So it's a turning point in the Western theater, Shiloh is. Okay? All right. There you go. That wasn't shorter than the last lecture. We'll work on this. All right. I'll talk to you in the Google Meets now. All right.